Can you imagine what your city would look like if you saw it from 10,000 feet above the ground? Neatly planned and perfect in proportion, like a geometric design. It would strike you as something very different from what it actually is while you are in the thick of it. And it is that picture what we will discuss in the poem that I shall read out to you today. But before we recite the poem, let me give you a brief background about the poet in this case. Now, the poem has been written by Zulfikar Ghosh. He was born on the 13th of March, 1935 in Sialkot, which is presently in Pakistan. He writes novels, poetry, and criticism around the topic of cultural alienation that we were facing back at the time. Ghosh's first novel, The Contradictions, he explores the cultural differences of the Western and the Eastern culture and their way of life in the book. His other works include The Murder of Aziz Khan, Crump's Terms, Hume's investigations into Bogart's script, A New History of Torments, Don Bueno, Figures of Enchantment, The Triple Mirror of the Self, and Shakespeare's Mortal Knowledge, a reading of the tragedies. Now, Ghosh's poems are often about the travels and memories. The poem Geography Lesson is based on one of his travel experiences by an aeroplane. Now, he goes on to describe the different scenes as he goes higher and higher in an aeroplane. So let us begin reciting the poem at once. Geography Lesson by Zulfikar Ghosh. When the jet sprang into the sky, it was clear why the city had developed the way it had. Seeing it scaled 6 inches to the mile, there seemed an inevitability about what on ground had looked haphazard, unplanned, and without style when the jet sprang into the sky. When the jet reached 10,000 feet, it was clear why the country had cities where the rivers ran and why the valleys were populated. The logic of geography that land and water attracted man was clearly delineated when the jet reached 10,000 feet. When the jet rose 6 miles high, it was clear the earth was round, that it had more sea than land, but it was difficult to understand that the men on the earth found causes to hate each other, to build walls across cities, and to kill. From that height, it was not clear why. Now that we have read the poem, let us understand the gist of it completely. So the poem describes the poet's opinion on the land below when viewed from the sky. He finds that as he continues to fly higher, the earth becomes more and more attractive. As the poet moves higher, he realizes that the country is full of cities and valleys. This made him realize that people are completely dependent upon land and water for their existence. At one point of time, the poet also realizes that there is more water on the earth than there is land. But he still can't understand why there are so many boundaries or walls that, people put up. What is the cause of this hatred? Why do people want to kill each other? Let's take every stanza of this poem and understand it one at a time. Okay? When the jet sprang into the sky, it was clear why the city had developed the way it had. Seeing it scaled 6 inches to the mile, there seemed an inevitability about what on ground had looked haphazard, unplanned and without style, when the jet sprang into the sky. So in this stanza, we can see that the poet is traveling somewhere by, of course, a jet plane. He gives us a view of the land as the jet takes off. Okay? He tells us that when the jet leaves the ground, once they start flying, one can clearly see the entire city. One can make out why the city has developed in a certain way. According to the poet, an area of 6 inches accommodates the infrastructure of 1 mile. He also realized that the city grows as per its necessity and not as to the proper plan. It does not have any particular pattern. So you see, the poet tries to give us a different perspective, you could say, of the land that we are living on. Now let's find out more about what he has to say. I'll be back with you very soon. Until then, goodbye. Tutormate. For more amazing video lectures, download the free app on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store.